Hi everyone, in this video we're going to look at the digital creation of the serial packaging project for S3 Graphics. And what we're going to start off with is the serial template file. It's a DrawPlus file and it's already been pre-populated with some information. Now, some of that information is locked, and the main thing is you keep both the template outline and the fold lines layers locked. You should only be working on the people creation layer, so you need to make sure you've clicked on that and it's highlighted. If you double click, it'll allow you to change name, etc. You don't need to do any of that. It's just important you start off there. Now that we're on the right layer, what we can do is we can start to edit this graphic. Now, just to highlight a couple of things before we get started, this top layer, the templates outline layer, is actually a white box with a hollow shape cut out. And it means that anything you do will actually sit behind this. So it means if you overlap the shape, which is okay, if you overlap it, it will be hidden and cut off, so that actually you don't need to trim anything, you don't need to worry about that. To show what I mean by that, I'm going to start off by adding my background colour. Now I'm just going to use the quick rectangle tool. I'm going to click and drag a box. Now it's white to start with. I've made it bigger than my serial template. And now what I can do is I can go up here, select my main body colour, and I'm going to change that to be a certain shade. Now I'll just change to be like a kind of dark blue for the time being. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my pointer tool again. I'm going to click and drag that shape. And you can see as I move that, it's still always hidden behind it. So it doesn't matter how big it is as long as it fits onto the page. I'm going to leave that for the time being. And what I'm going to try and do is just create a couple of my little graphics that I need. Now I'm going to use some of the other files that you'll be given by your teacher. So I've got my little serial box, logos and characters, and that's the first thing I'm going to bring in. I'm going to click and drag using my pointer tool around this little character. I'm going to use Ctrl-C to copy, and then I'm going to go back into my box template. I'm going to use Ctrl and V on my keyboard. That allows me to bring in my little character. Now I can still fully edit that while it's in here. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the colour of my typeface. I'm going to change that just to be white. Now at the moment it's looking pretty flat, plain. So what I can do is I can apply my drop shadow tool. Now it's over here. I'm going to click on that, and you'll see if I zoom in a little bit more, there's these three little pointers here. I'm going to click and drag the centre one just down. Now it's going to lag a little bit, but what you should see is that I've now got a shadow around the outside. If I want to edit that shadow, zoom in a little bit further and you'll see that there's these now extra pointers. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change how opaque it is. So I'm going to make it darker just by increasing that percentage, dragging that towards the middle. And then I'm going to reduce how blurred it is just by clicking this one and dragging it in. And what I should end up with is a much darker, much crisper shadow. And if I click the pointer tool and just click off that, you should now see that that's got quite a dark shadow. And what that does is it adds a bit of depth to it. At the same time, what I'm able to do is manipulate my little character. I'm going to ungroup him for the time being, and I'm going to move my text out of the way. And because he's ungrouped, what I could do is I could decide, right, I'm going to change the colour here, and I'm going to make him a kind of bright green colour. Now, if I want the legs and the head to be a kind of similar colour, I can use my colour picker. So I'm going to pick the green colour that I've just used. It now appears up in this box. I'll use my pointer tool again, and I'm going to select the little legs and the little antenna up at the top. I'm going to choose that colour. And rather than looking like one flat colour, I'm going to change my sliders to go to tinting, and I'm just going to get a slightly darker colour, just so he looks as though his legs are a little bit further behind his head. And now when I click that, you can see that I'm going to keep the purple spots. The green colour stands out a lot better, creates a lot more contrast. So group him back together. I'm going to need to click quite far out on the page. I'm going to click a box and drag, select around him, and use group again. And now I can increase his size. I can use the little rotation option to move him around. And I've got the opportunity to start moving these, overlapping them and changing it. So just now I want the little alien character to sit in front. So I'm going to use the option here to bring to front. You can also go into arrange and use order objects, and it means if you don't want to bring them all the way to the front or all the way to the back, you can send them back in order, and it gives you a little keyboard shortcut as well. So I'm going to rotate my text round just to here, and I'm going to scale that down a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the little O with the little O from the alien in his little antenna. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to convert it to curves. and I'm going to click and just delete that out. And what I can do now is move my little alien into here, and he becomes a more interesting graphic. What I'll then do is click and drag again, and I'm going to group those two together just now. I'm going to bring that down a little bit lower. One of the other graphics that's been prepared for you is in this file here. Now it's the cereal bowl graphic, and what it is a pre-prepared cereal bowl with different types of cereals. Now it's a vector graphic, so what you're able to do is click on the bowl, and again you could change the colour. So if I want to use that same kind of green colour, I might need to reduce the opacity here, just make it a little bit more vibrant green. I will lose a bit of the shadowing, but that's okay. And then I can decide what type of cereal that I want. So I'm going to choose these ones. They're already grouped, so what I can do is move that on top of the bowl. I can then click and drag around that. I'm able to group it together. And once I've grouped it together, I can do my Control C on my keyboard, go back into this file, and do my Control V. Now, we'll paste to the side. But to zoom quite far out, I can use that down here. And then I'm going to just bring that in and obviously scale it right down. And then move it into my shape. I'll zoom in a little bit closer. And I'm going to move that up there. And what I've got now is a more interesting graphic. I've been able to use something that is a bit more sophisticated than what I probably wanted to do on my own. I've used that graphic to help me, and I'm in the process of making a more exciting, more complicated graphic just by using some ones from FreePic and some ones that the teachers have prepared for you. Just very quickly, some other little options to point out to you. Remember, you've got a range of drawing tools over in the corner. So for example, the quick ellipse and the polygon where you can manipulate different shapes. I'm going to bring in the little ellipse and just click and draw a circle. Now it's come in as the same blue colour as I had up here. I'm just going to change that to the green for the time being. And say for example that I wanted to create little nutritional pie charts that you might sometimes find on cereal packaging. If I choose my node tool, what I'm able to do is I can actually choose how much of that is a circle, so I can almost make it like a percentage of it. So what I'm going to do to help myself out is I'm actually going to use Control C, and I'm going to do Control Alt V on my keyboard. That's going to paste another one right on top. If I was just to change the colour of that slightly, again I'll use my tinting option. This time I'll go lighter. If I use a little node tool and I select up here, you can see that I could actually turn that into a little percentage and group them together as two little objects I want to use. So I'm going to select that one and that one together, group them, and what I could do is I could use that as a little pie chart for my content of sugar or my content of fat or whatever. Now the last thing I'm going to use comes from a little FreePic graphic that I've downloaded earlier. I'm going to use this little constellation of stars. So I'm going to select one of these, I'm just going to ungroup it. And I'm not going to use the little moon, so I'll just delete that out. And I'm not going to use the little astronaut. I can just get it and delete that out. And now if I click and drag around that group of stars, I'm not going to take all of them. In fact, I think I'll just take this kind of bottom half. I'll group that together, and again, Control C and use Control V. Now, I'm not going to send that to the very back and keep it there, but I will send it to the back first, and then I'm going to use Arrange, Order Objects, and Bring Forward 1. That means it will be behind everything on the page apart from the blue background. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the size of that, and what it's going to allow me to do is add a little texture to the page to make it look as though he's actually out in space. Now, to give it a bit more depth, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to Control and C that, so I'm going to copy it, and once I've copied it, I'm actually just going to reduce the opacity in this little slider. That's going to make it more transparent, and you can see that those stars now look a little bit further away. But if I was to Control and V, you can see I've pasted another one on here. I can move them about. I'm going to reduce the size of them, so I might want to move them over here to fill up a little bit more of the white space. And I'll reduce the opacity to a slightly different level of opacity so they're a little bit brighter, but not very much. And then I'll do Control Alt V one more time. This time I'm going to increase the size. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate that graphic round. and I'm going to put them up at 100%, which they already are. And for that one, again, I'm going to send to the back, and then this time I'll arrange and I'll bring order once and do a second time. Now, as I'm well on the way to creating a more sophisticated graphic, just using some of the basic tools that are already there for me. Remember that in the Arrange toolbar down at the bottom corner, you'll get the option to add and subtract shapes together, so you could bring the two things together, remove little parts out of the objects. So pay close attention to that, and for getting alignment correct, you'll get lots of options down in the Align bar down there to be able to make things look a little bit more tidy, a little bit more organised, as well as having your usual text tools, your drop shadow one that I've shown, and also that little wine glass transparency tool. So make sure you're using them in your graphic to make more interesting graphics.